Good morning, everyone. My name is Garrett, and I'm presenting AuthentiCITY VR today. So this is Ready Player 1+1. If you're familiar, pretty fun movie and book. So if you're familiar, I'm kind of in the intersection of AI, blockchain, and virtual reality. And so what we're doing is we're minting couples creations on blockchain as NFTs and creating the future of the metaverse. So a little bit of background on me. I went to BYU, was producer of a senior film 6 years ago, and since then I've worked on a lot of pretty fun computer graphic projects and really enjoy everything in computer graphics. Recently, last year I joined a startup studio where we did AI digital humans and just see the future of exponential technologies. And I'm very involved in how spirituality and technology are possible to merge together into the new virtual world. And yeah, I'm very excited about the potential of music festivals and just wellness all around. So my own personal story of how I came up with this was actually a couple of years ago. My wife and I were going through a few years ago, my wife and I were going through some pretty difficult times in our marriage where we got to the point where we almost separated, and we actually went through a medicinal ceremony together that connected our relationship unlike anything we had ever experienced before. And during that experience, I said, I want every couple in the whole world to be able to go through this experience because it was so sacred and beautiful for our relationship, and it's the reason that we're together today. And so I decided, let's create something that is remarkable where people can connect like this experience. So the problem that we're solving is that anxiety and depression are at all-time highs. Millennials right now are struggling to find that authentic community that they can trust and rely on. And the metaverse is essentially a digital version of our reality where we can teleport and go anywhere, and it's here today. It's growing at an exponential rate, and it is going to change every fabric of our lives, including especially millennials' relationships with their spouse or their children, their families. And often technology gets in the way of these connections. And so my idea is essentially how to connect people through technology and use the wave that's coming, go with it instead of against it. So the solution is to connect these couples to other couples in this authentic community, both virtually and in person. And essentially, couples get to enter this metaverse together. There's an idea that when you create something with someone else, that you regard that positive experience. And if you can do that over and over and over, you can actually create a bond with each other. And so the idea is to create a once-a-month wellness festival in your living room, and you engage in the 5 senses to unlock essentially a 6th sense of deep connection with you and your spouse. It's possible you can go into the metaverse alone, and you might not come out with your spouse on the other end. This is an entire new virtual world that is like social media times 10, where it's face-to-face with others, and it's very real, and it's happening right before us. So with the virtual reality side, there's different partners that I've kind of been building relationships with over the last couple of years, and it seems like now is the time. It hasn't been the time before, but now that the metaverse is here and COVID has accelerated this, these are some of the partners from Trip, which is a digital psychedelic called the Technodelic, where you actually have the ability to have a transcendental spiritual awakening experience in virtual reality. The sanitation with Clean Box, and then different sensory experiences. Super rare is a non-fungible token on blockchain. So some of these different partners are possible to provide both the hardware of the VR headsets and the actual software gaming. I want to be clear, none of this is, I'm not creating this from scratch. These are 5-star experiences that already exist, and we are going to leverage those experiences that already exist and other people have already done all that hard work that costs so much money to build. We're just combining them all into an experience. So the global wellness market is huge. I don't think we're tapping necessarily into all of it, but into a small portion, somewhere where mental health and meets community, and definitely with some physical activity, but we're just somewhere in between where gaming and wellness meet. So with gaming, mobile gaming is on an exponential rise. I think VR is a small part of that right now, but every year that goes by, it's becoming bigger and bigger in the billions. So now with cloud gaming, anything is possible. Before you had to do this, Facebook did this test a couple years ago where they hooked couples up to in the virtual environment together to see what virtual dating was like. And there was wires everywhere, there's cords, the Void has done this, it's very expensive, but now you can actually have just 2 headsets and you don't even need controllers. You actually just have your hands. And so you can actually have these connective experiences where the two people are in virtual reality in the same physical space together, and they can use their hands to interact with the virtual world as well as each other. So the possibilities really are endless, and this is just the beginning. And with the music festivals, we're not making a music festival, but a wellness festival. So taking the ideas of wellness, and I'll go into the next slide here. But the market's huge. People want to feel connected to others, and they just, we're constantly seeking connection. So the business model is a yearly subscription where it's a 1+1 virtual experience where you're actually with your significant other. You go through these mindfulness, these technodelics, which is essentially a digital experience that allows you to connect, like a medicinal experience. So once a month you would have this experience, and then we'd go through those already existing apps, and then it would be essentially combining that VR and wellness into a creation. So you as a couple would actively be involved in the creation process, and then you can sell that as a non-fungible token on blockchain. So on Ethereum right now, this is a huge space. If you're not familiar, it's blowing up right now. And once a year, we would essentially take all of these experiences and build an in-person festival where you can experience other people's experiences that they've created throughout this 11-month journey, and for that end of the year, where you actually have these sensory experiences as well with these other people. So just a little bit of background, AR and VR was about 11 billion in 2017. If you look at 2025, it's growing at a massive rate. The growth is going to reach almost 570 billion, I believe. The millennials right now are looking for experiences just to connect. People would rather spend money on these experiences rather than stuff. In 2020, we had our first virtual music festival with Burning Man and Lost Horizons, and this was unprecedented. And with NFTs right now, non-fungible tokens, essentially this is where everything is going with art. Something that wasn't possible before in computer graphics was to create digital scarcity is now possible. So even the subscription that a couple pays for to join the community they can make more money by creating something and selling it as a scarce good. So the potential is massive. And I believe the future business models are decentralized, they're autonomous, and they're controlled by AI and smart contracts. And I believe that all of this is converging. I study this stuff all the time. And so the metaverse is the convergence of blockchain AI and VR AR. And this market is going to create an entirely new economy that we can't even foresee unless you're involved day to day. So kind of what the experience looks like is that trip. You would essentially trigger dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins, which are chemicals that connect you. And so you go through these trip-like experiences where you get to connect with your own personal energy and the energy of your spouse or significant other, and you would create together. You'd create this world, and you can that world that you create is what you would sell on the blockchain. Also, to really catalyze your emotions, you can dance. You really just get moving, and then we take you through different sensory experiences to really change, take you out of whatever line you're on. Once again, that problem that we're solving is that technologies can sometimes get in the way. How can we connect people through technology, and then introducing them into social VR, where we would actually have an incredible amount of social presence, which if you haven't experienced social VR, it's pretty wild. So in the in-person wellness festival, we would do sensory deprivation, Wim Hof ice bath and breathing, which triggers pretty much all the release of happy chemicals that you can get, and then have sensory experiences like dining in the dark, where it gives you a new empathetic view on reality. So experiences are, for millennials, for my generation, almost everyone, 73%, just have a deep desire for human connection. That's what we want. That's why we join experiences. That's why we want to be a part of something. And I think a lot of people are missing that right now. So the startup right now, we're looking for seed funding just to get the ball rolling and essentially get sponsorship for hardware, software, and then beta test this on 300 couples. The idea is to get a $1,200 early adopter incentive price, and then use micro-influencer marketing to get the ball rolling, where these people already have built authentic communities and they would really love this experience. And then, essentially we would partner with blockchain protocol, create a city, an authentic city, like a virtual city, and then also have it in person, since that's so important. So just a little bit of analysis. I think one of the greatest strengths, it's not exactly, I think this is extremely profitable, but at the same time, I think this is relationships, if we don't do this, then there could be a lot of relationships at stake. And I really have been planning this for a couple years, and this seems like the right time. I don't think there's been a better time. My weakness is just me right now. I don't have a team, and so everything has to kind of go through me. And then opportunities, I think influencers, micro-influencers with authentic communities, that they can sell their art to the fans. And so art that they create will be able to actually be an incentive. Hardware for threats, there's a huge hardware problem that needs to be worked out. And I think we're dependent on Wi-Fi. We're dependent on different things working. It just has to work. So it's also a difficult sell. Until you've experienced this, it's kind of hard to just say it. You just kind of have to do it. But yeah, that's it. That's AuthentiCITY VR. It's a multi-sensory experience for couples and to take them through the metaverse together. So we're gamifying relationships, and I think this is just the very beginning. Thank you.
All right, we'll open it up for questions for Garrett.
Garrett, so fun. Thanks for sharing. Tell us about your business model. Is it a pay per session or a monthly subscription, or how do you make money on this thing?
Yeah, it's a yearly subscription. So you'd sign up for a full year. You would go through these 11 experiences. So it would be $1,200 for the early adopter. And we would pre-sell this to 300 couples, and to essentially make sure we get product market fit. And so $1,200, and then we would have the wellness festival at the end of that year.
So does the $1,200 include the equipment, or do you have to purchase the equipment and then on top of that you have the yearly subscription fee? Yeah, so the equipment is shared. So for different tiers, you can have people who already have the equipment. They can go through more of a virtual on your own training, but actually having someone go to people's houses one-on-one and
teach them, take them through these experiences, and share the equipment. So you don't just have everyone has to buy a headset, but you actually share the headset and you just take it. So we can do 300 couples. We can do 10 couples a day through this, and this is all here locally to start here from here to Lehigh, essentially.
Question. So one thing I liked about this is kind of like helping like couples like mend their relationships a little bit, like finding out more about each other. But what would entice someone to go to Ready Player One Plus One rather than like trying to find like a licensed therapist to try and help their couple problems?
Yeah, so just in my own experience and from customer interviews, couples therapy is great, but when we date, we're not typically in couples therapy. And so those emotions, those hormones that are being exchanged, that like literal electrical energy between couples doesn't happen. Whereas this is taking the idea of traditional couples therapy, which could help your communication skills, but this is bringing it back to that dating where it's fun, it's entertainment therapy, and you don't know that you're having the therapy, but I think it's more of people don't want to pay $250 for a session of couples therapy. They'd rather pay $250 to go to Disneyland, but Disneyland isn't necessarily going to connect them on a spiritual level, whereas this would.
My question is similar to his. Have you tested this with other couples that have been having relationship issue, or has it just been you and your wife?
Yeah, definitely have tested this. I need to do a lot more testing. But yeah, so customer interviews have tested this out. The hardware is probably the biggest thing right now, just the challenge of taking on the headset or putting it on, taking it off. People have never done VR before. It's technically difficult for people. And so, but as far as the connecting experience of building oxytocin, having the couples hold hands or actually having them physically touching the other person's body, while they're creating like their own digital replica, stuff like that. Like couples really, they like that part. Other parts are more, we have to work on.
Follow-up question: what was the percentage of those couples that stayed together or their relationship bettered with your company or their experience with your VR?
Yeah, definitely don't have any like hard stats on that. No numbers. I think just generally need to test on a lot more couples to even answer that.
Okay, I've got a gazillion, but I'll do one right now. I see you're targeting couples, relationships. There's a large growing issue with mental illness and depression and anxiety in our youth and younger than even the teenage age. Have you thought about marketing this to a parent with a child that has that problem, that concern, and going in that direction as well?
Yeah, I actually started that way. We started looking essentially at therapy for moms whose kids game too much and then are super disconnected from reality. That was okay, but it requires the kid to be on board. And so there was a lot of, it wasn't exactly calling to me because I wasn't that kid. And so for me to actually have been through and understand the problem, that's kind of what kind of brings me to this.
Okay, I'm also kind of thinking about that, what you just said. They're gaming too much, right? They're almost disconnecting because they're in a situation like gaming so much. Mm-hmm. So I think a suggestion would be to figure out a way in that generation that is being raised to become disconnected to our humans. They're texting when they're sitting right next to each other. They're gaming when they're across the street from each other. How do you feel that and alleviate that problem in the younger age? Because then I would imagine they probably have better connections as they're getting older.
Yeah, I think the next generation for sure is going to have different even ideas of relationships. So yeah, I appreciate that feedback. Yeah, it's definitely I think that would be I think a lot of people are already solving that. There's companies in that space right now. And yeah, I think maybe partnering with someone like that who has figured that stuff out. But yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I have a million things too in my head too about your company. But have you thought about kind of also making it educational? Like, for example, in my experience, my son, he can tell you anything about Nintendo, right? The history of Nintendo, any game Nintendo produces, he knows it, right? But he doesn't know his timetables, right? So I was thinking if there was a game that would help him like learn educational stuff like timetables or algebra. Have you thought about going in that way as well?
There's a lot of companies doing education with metaverse right now, a ton. It's just not my field or my expertise or zone of genius. So we're educating couples through entertainment and connecting experiences. That's kind of the target market.
Thank you so much. This is a really fun space, and I love that you're passionate about. I mean, this is very important, right? Helping people through these transitions. So, I had two quick questions. First, just kind of you explained a little bit how you wanted to get this started and rolling with these 300, initial participants. How do you hope to scale beyond that? How far do you see this product reaching? Since it's kind of an event organizing company. How do you scale? What's the plan? And then the other question I had was, you've got this idea that you can have people experiencing and also like producing and selling their experiences. Are you worried at all that the idea of production and selling might actually take away from the therapeutic nature of creation?
So the actual experience that the couples are creating is one of intimacy. So they're creating in VR, they're creating an intimate room, or like this is the experience that we can go back and we can remember these emotions. I guess I can answer your scale question last. It could possibly take away if they're thinking we're going to sell this later. So the idea is that with a non-fungible token, you can create just one, so the couple doesn't have to sell it; they can keep it for themselves. But if they mint two, then they can sell one to their biggest fan and say, hey, you can now take part in how we connected as a relationship, or you can, give it away to your biggest fan or your family or something. It doesn't have to be a sale, but as I think about micro-influencers, how they are a big part of the economy now, especially the digital, Instagram, it's huge, TikTok, how they can be a part of that. I think that people can decide to just keep it for themselves, but it will be minted as a part of AuthentiCITY. So each couple would build this room, essentially, of their experiences that other people can walk through and say, oh, this is like how you guys connected, this is how you bonded. But yeah, the selling part is possible to take away. As far as scale goes, that's probably not my zone that I focus on too much. I think scalability is going to be a little bit difficult until hardware is maybe more, everyone has it. So I think scale, I'm not worried about scale right now. I'm trying to do something that doesn't scale, at least for the first year.
Okay, we have two questions online. The first one is, have you looked at having a professional PhD MFC be part of your core?
Working with neuroscientists and PhD level flow research, people that get into flow. And so that's definitely, will be a big part of the team. Make sure that we're hitting all the hormones and doing everything to the T.
Okay, and then the second question is, what kind of insurance are you going to carry?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't thought about that at all. So, good one.
Okay, I've got another question. So this would be lost on me, Garrett, because I'm one of those in the population that gets extreme motion sickness. Can't even watch my kids play their VR games, which is really frustrating. So my husband and I would not get to benefit from this. So how are you maybe, I know that some of us are just out of luck in this arena. Is there some science behind, as you're working with a neuroscientist, that you guys can maybe harness to fix that problem for the rest of us that would love to participate in something like this? That's your $1 billion idea.
What was the motion sickness? When did have you done the Oculus Quest 2?
Everything.
You
I have one.
You've done.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah.
you have motion sickness.
Can't do Disneyland, Universal.
So yeah, right now for zero motion sickness, the headsets are about $4,000 or more. The frequency has to be high enough. There's a lot of things that have to be in place. So for people that have motion sickness, yeah, the problem's being solved by way smarter people, by Facebook and Google. So yeah.
I know Jump's looking at that too, so
Yeah.
I was glad to see them on your partner slide. Okay, we've got one last question, unless anyone else wants to raise their hand and beat me to it. All right, what can the 1 Million Cups community do for you, Garrett?
Great question. I think right now I'm just really looking for the things that I'm not looking at. It is just me. I'm looking for a co-founder. Would be nice to have a female co-founder to have some, variability. Someone local. So if you know anyone who's interested in this field, this is definitely, getting the word out and just understanding what I'm not thinking about would be best.
Okay, let's hear it for Garrett and AuthentiCITY VR.